Hi guys, just a really quick intro video here, mostly just a chance for me to upload something to YouTube, provide you with a link, make sure that you guys can find the link and get to the video, sort of just a trial run on what's to come. So this is ELTP 1011, in quotations there I've just put code. This is a code course, and really the only thing I want to talk about in this video is that code book. Okay, I mentioned it in the email that I sent out earlier today. Really, this is going to be our primary source of confusion getting started, is which code book are we using? This is the code book that we're using. Let me get this right up here so you can all see it. It is the Canadian Electrical Code. It says Part 1, and it's dated 2021. Okay, so the confusion starts right away because the name of the course is actually the Ontario Electrical Safety Code. In terms of the rules that we have to follow here in Ontario, ultimately it's the Ontario Electrical Safety Code Book. In terms of education, any academic facility in the entire province will use the Canadian Electrical Code. Okay, and so that is what we're going to do. So you're going to say, Dave, what's the difference? And the really quick answer is there isn't a difference. Okay, in terms of the structure, in terms of the look, in terms of the layout, and in almost all cases, in terms of the code number references, they are identical. Okay, typically as a rule of thumb, the Ontario code book falls one edition behind or lags one edition behind the Canadian code book. Okay, so there's a new edition comes out every 3 years with revisions. Okay, the revisions will appear first in the Canadian code book, and then they will appear in the Ontario code book in its next edition 3 years later. Okay, so as a primary difference, that's it. There's actually more in the Ontario code book than there is in the Canadian code book. The Ontario code book includes a collection of diagrams, which I find incredibly useful, and they don't appear here in the Canadian code book. So that's another significant difference, if you will. Beyond that, they're really identical. Okay, so if you go to the bookstore to get a code book for this course, this is what you're going to get, because that's exactly what I did. It wasn't until I walked out of the bookstore that I went, wait a minute, this is not the book I thought I was going to buy. So if you go to the bookstore on campus to buy your code book, then you're going to have the very same one that I do. If you've taken the initiative and said, you know, back in December, I'm going to be taking a code course and I need a code book and it's the Ontario code course, and so I'm going to buy the Ontario code book, never fear, you haven't wasted your money because it wasn't cheap. We will be able to use it. You will be able to use it. Okay, I will teach from the Canadian book. When I give code references, they will be from the Canadian code book. If we discover along the way that there are variations, and there undoubtedly will be, okay, I would suggest that probably in about 80 to 90% of the cases, the code reference that I provide from the Canadian book will match what you have in the Ontario book. We will discover and talk about the variations as we get to them. Okay, so if for any particular question I tell you that I'm working from a particular code rule and you say, well, that doesn't line up with what I'm looking at, we'll pause, we'll say, okay, well then where are you? You're in the Ontario book, and you know you have to shift forward one rule or back one rule because something got added or omitted. Okay, I'm hoping it doesn't generate a lot of confusion. I recognize that it's going to generate some. We're going to do our very best to minimize that. Okay, we'll talk about it as we go. That's all I wanted to cover in this video. Like I said, it was going to be short. This is just a dry run to make sure that we're all going to be able to do this. And that was the one thing that I really wanted to cover because I know it's going to be an issue going forward, but we are going to make the best of the situation by making the decision right here and right now that we are working from the Canadian code book. That is the one that we're going to follow. And we will identify adjustments for those in the Ontario code book as we get to them. Okay. If you also, one more thought, if you happen to be working from an old edition of the Canadian code book, the 2018, as opposed to the 2021, you may find that any variations in code numbers in your book line up with the variations that the Ontario code book students are finding, because those two probably line up very, very nicely, because like I say, the Ontario code book tends to lag an edition behind. We'll figure that out when we get there. So that's where we're going to want to have some Teams meetings with some interaction, so that you guys can tell me what it is you're seeing. Okay, and the occasions that I just create a video, I'm just going to be referring to the material I have, and there'll have to be some interaction through Teams or whatever to clarify for those who are using a different book. Which reminds me of one more thing I do want to say quickly before I shut it down. If you have questions for me, by all means fire them my way. You have two options. Okay, I've put my email address here, so you can certainly send me an email or a question through email. But I would ask that most of the questions come through Blackboard. Okay, or sorry, not Blackboard, but Teams rather. Once Microsoft Teams is set up, it's not even up and running yet, but I'm sure it will be in another day or two. By sending the question to me through Microsoft Teams, it gives everybody in the class the opportunity to see that question and then see my response. Okay, so that we can all come along together. For those of you who might be working out of a different book, you're going to be able to see through those conversations on Teams, whatever code rule adjustment might be necessary. Okay, so I prefer the questions to come to me through Teams. That makes it more like a classroom environment where everybody hears the question and everybody hears the answer. But by all means, if you want to keep your questions private, if they're not content related and something else, I'm always available through my email. Okay, that's it for now, guys. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to get this on Blackboard. I'm going to provide you with the link. And if Teams is up and running for Thursday during our regular scheduled class time, we will meet on Teams at that time. I'll let you know ahead of time if and when Teams is available to communicate that. If you don't hear anything from me through Teams because you don't see this course on Teams, then Thursday's class will not happen. I'll probably create a video and throw it out there on Thursday or Friday, something prior to next week. But that's going to be fluid. We'll figure that as we get there, depending on how quickly the technology becomes available. All right, great. That's it for now, guys. We'll talk soon.